محمد وآل محمد.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة والصلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين ورحمة للعالمين بالقاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله، روحي وجسمي وأرواح العالمين لك الفداء، يا غريب يا مظلوم يا شهيد بأرض كربلاء. ما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله لا يغير ما بأنفسهم، لا يغير ما إلا يغير ما بأنفسهم. صلى الله على محمد وعلى
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. This is the verse that I have started my lectures with, and it's a question of human change, human reformation, both at the individual and social level. If you recall, I was talking in the earlier lectures about how we focus so much on the body, on the material, and we don't want to think about that. As you know, that in Islam, we are encouraged to think about that. We are encouraged to go to the cemetery at least once a week. And sometimes you look at the grave, you know that this is going to be our final destination. If you look at the West, they don't talk much about death. They talk about life, about enriching yourself. And therefore, sometimes they need counseling. They do not know how to deal with death itself. In the Islamic tradition, as I said, we are encouraged to think about it and even to prepare for death. That you should even keep, if you can, keep your coffin, a shroud ready. That is the ultimate only thing that you're going to carry with you in the final reward. Maulana Rumi has a couplet in this story. As I said, these stories do not necessarily have to be historically correct, but there is a moral behind it that we can learn from. He talks of the time of Nabi Sulaiman. Nabi Sulaiman had the ability to transport people from one place to another. Apart from other miracles that he could perform, he could speak and understand the language of animals. He could also transfer people. So it is said, according to Jalaluddin Rumi, that a person in his time was walking in Jerusalem and he saw Malik al-Maut. It was a very nice sight. And of course, he was immediately scared, and Malik al-Maut looked very angry at him. So he went, this person went to Nabi Sulaiman, said, look, can you take me, send me to India? He said, why to India? It's because I've just seen Malik al-Maut. It doesn't look very friendly to me at all. Nabi Sulaiman said, okay, to India you go. Later on, Nabi Sulaiman met Malik al-Maut. He says, why did you do that? He said, why did I do what? Why did you scare my friend so much that I have to send him to India? Malik al-Maut says, I did not scare him, but I was surprised. How were you surprised? Malik al-Maut said, because in my book it said I should get him in India. I was wondering what he's doing in Jerusalem. In other words, you cannot escape that. That will come after you, and sometimes you will go after them without even realizing it. You cannot escape that. But to carry on with my main topic of creating a good society, an upright society, I was talking about two main principles that the Quran elaborates. Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. But that is a way of uplifting the morality of people, the ethics of the people. Because many a time we fail in our consciousness fails us. We fail ourselves. Our ethical duty is missing. And therefore we need others to remind us. And the reminder should not be, don't do this and don't do that. It's more like an ethical upliftment. And therefore the Quran says, Al-mu'minuna wal-mu'minat, ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd. The believing men and the believing women are guardians of each other. يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. Because they are the ones who do amr bil ma'ruf and keep away from that which is forbidden. I was talking yesterday also of how the Quran elaborates another principle for us, which Allah commands us. He doesn't recommend us, He commands us to observe. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. That Allah commands you that you will be just and that you will do beautiful deeds to others. You know, I've studied different religions, I teach different religions, but my main focus, of course, is Islam. I don't believe I've seen any scripture or any book which is so sensitive to other human beings as the Quran is. If you recall, I said yesterday that the Quran says in Surah Al-Hujarat that we have created you from one male and one female so that you may know each other. لِتَعَارَفُوا. Knowing each other, understanding each other, not judging each other, not fighting against each other, but knowing and understanding each other. And indeed, in this diversity, that in this differences lies actually in ayatullah. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ. Amongst the signs of Allah is that خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, that He has created the heavens and the earth. How different are the heaven and the earth. وَأَلْسِنَتْكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ. And amongst these signs is that you are different in your tongues and in your color. Those diversity actually is a way of Allah testing us. How we deal with each other. How we connect with each other. And as I said, the Quran lays down very clear principles of how to behave. I talked about this yesterday. The creation of a good society in the eyes of Islam is that it should be able to reform itself. It should not only I as an individual should be changing my own self at all times, but the society should be able to collectively think about where its moral, ethical, economic failings are. Many a time we hardly ever sit together and say, how can we be better? I always say that a community which stops thinking starts sinking. A community doesn't think, it will sink. And we are encouraged this at all times in the Quran to think, to contemplate, to better ourselves. Sometimes it is difficult for us living in the 21st century to visualize what was happening in the 7th century. Because our society, our cultural norms, the way we behave, the way we expect things are very different from the tribal society in the 7th century. But again, the Quran, when the Quran tells us stories, histories, it's not the history that's important. It's the morals behind those stories that are important. So when, for example, it talks about Ibrahim, it talks about Noah or about Fir'aun, it's not only the story. Those are important, but you will notice he doesn't go into details at all. He doesn't tell us where and when Musa was born or where Ibrahim is buried. It's not important for the Quran. It's the story behind that person of how he tried to uplift his society. Similarly, in the time when the Quran was revealed, it was a tribal society which was governed by retaliation. Retaliation means that basically if one member of a tribe kills another member of another tribe, that there has to take retribution. You have to kill that person or even a member of the tribe. And there was a cycle of continuous violence. The Quran wanted to change that because a cycle of violence will bring more violence, will create more death. The Quran wanted to change from the culture of death to the culture of life. And again, look at this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In the qisas means, you know what qisas is, right? You take revenge. There is life for you in qisas. All people, those who think, Ya Uli al-Albab, or people who think, remember this, but even in retribution, there is life rather than death. Basically, what the Quran was saying that instead of taking revenge against others by killing somebody, you can either forgive or even accept what we call blood money, rather than just taking revenge by killing, because that will just create a cycle of death all the time. And then what the Quran says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In qisas, there is life for you, or people who think. Why is it so important? Because, as I said, instead of just retribution, we need restitution and restoration. These are two important concepts, by the way. When somebody does wrong to us, our first natural instinct is, I'm going to get my revenge. I'm going to show him or her. I'm going to do even worse things. And that's the case for many of us. But the Quran says the opposite. Not only do you forgive, but you restore that person the way that he or she was in your mind before he violated you. In other words, normally when somebody does wrong, the first thing that comes to our mind when we see him or her is, this person is a bad person. Look what he did to me. The Quran says no. Not only should you forgive, you restitute, you also restore. In other words, forgive and forget. Sallallahu
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجك.
Please come forward. Please come forward. The nearer the Molana, the more kebab you get. Sallallahu Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجك.
And the whole idea of the creation of a just and good society starts where, you know? It starts at home. Because a good society is made up of good families. Without good families, there's no good society. And therefore, and we'll talk more about the family, inshallah, in the next few nights. But it's important for the Quran to create, and you will see that the Quran puts a lot of emphasis, not only on society and social principles, but also good families. Because a good family creates good society. And therefore, one of the du'as, which is mentioned in the Quran, which we are encouraged to recite, is this: رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Ya Allah, give us from our spouses, not husbands, not wives, spouses, referring to both. Give us amongst our spouses and our children those who delight our eyes. In other words, our spouses and our children should be blended and bonded together with us, because they are our delight of our eyes. وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And not only make us a muttaqi, but make us an imam of muttaqi. In other words, we should be leading others towards taqwa. We should become role models for others. Sallu ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجك.
My sisters and brothers, I've been talking about the reformation of the self and the reformation of society. The Quran, as I've mentioned, lays down these principles. But it's more than just laying down principles. It's also showing us people in front of us who we can identify with, those who are role models. And interestingly, when the Quran talks of the Prophet of a role model, we recite this verse, but we recite only part of it. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. He said, there was in the Prophet, or there is in the Prophet, a model for you. No, my friends. Look at the complete verse. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. There was a beautiful model for you, not just a model. In other words, he's a model for those who seek beauty. In other words, if you want to do beautiful action, act beautifully, think beautifully, do beautifully, look at the Prophet. Because he wasn't just a model, he was a beautiful model. As I said the other night, that Allah says that He beautified everything that He created. This beautiful model is what we call wilaya. And I think that I would like to spend some time talking about wilaya. It's a way of transforming us, not only as ideals, but as role models. A very clear verse on wilaya, of course, the verse of Ghadir, where the Prophet is told, بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ وَإِنْ لَمْ تَفْعَلْ فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ الرِّسَالَةَ. O Prophet, proclaim, tell them what has been revealed to you by your Lord. And if you don't do this, just one message, if you do not deliver, your whole message has been nullified. مَا بَلَّغْتَ الرِّسَالَةَ. Your risala has been nullified. As we know, the Prophet appointed Imam Ali as his successor. But the verse after that is also more instructive. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت نعمتي عليكم ورضيت بكم إسلام دينا. Today I have perfected your religion. The religion becomes perfect only after the wilayah of Imam Ali has been proclaimed.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
To put it differently, then, without the wilayah, the religion is not perfect, it's not complete. اليوم أكملت لكم. Today I have perfected your religion and I have send you my blessings. And I think we also need to understand that there is a difference between, we use this term in English, but we don't even think about it, authority and power. Wilayah is authority. Power is khilafah. Anybody can claim power, right? We know so many people who are morally corrupt, etc., and today they are powerful. We recognize their power, but we do not recognize the authority. We recognize them as powerful people because they are ruling, but we do not recognize them as authority. We do not recognize their wilayah. Because wilayah comes from Allah and takes you back to Allah. Whereas authority, the khilafah, comes from a human being and takes you back to the human being. And therefore, we need to distinguish between wilayah and khilafah itself. Khilafah is power wielded by the people for the people, whereas wilayah is an authority which comes from Allah and takes you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, Allah speaks to the wali, not to the khalifa. Allah speaks to his role model that he appoints through wilayah, but not through khilafah. If Allah spoke to the Khalifa, then anybody who's a powerful leader says, can claim God has spoken to me. There are people who do that, by the way. That God has told me to do this, God, as if God talks to them only. On the contrary, it is only through wilayah that Allah talks to us. Sallu ala Muhammad. This awliya, the plural of wali is awliya. We are referring essentially to the Imams. They have given us through various parts of the examples of how to reform ourselves and how to treat those who do wrong to us, how to reform and change our society. Look at this particular example. The verse is quite easy to remember. Certain verses are easy to remember, by the way, in the Quran. Certain verses are a bit difficult. So, for example, Ayatul Tathir, we can't forget it. Ayatul Tathir, you know, Ayatul Tathir is 33. Chapter 33, verse 33. Similarly, Ghadir is 567. Chapter 5, verse 67. Right? That is the verse of Balid Mountain. Similarly, this particular verse of Wilayah is 555. Chapter 5, verse 55. إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا والذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. Indeed, what Arabs will tell you, those who know Arabic, إنما is restrictive. Only these people are your wali, nobody else. Who are these people? إنما وليكم الله. Allah is your wali. ورسوله والذين آمنوا والذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. They are the ones who do give the zakat while they are actually in ruku. We know exactly who this refers to. In other words, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is teaching us that even when you are in your prayers, you can give your zakat. You perform hukuk Allah and hukuk nas both at the same time. In other words, you serve Allah through humanity, not instead of humanity. Sallu ala Muhammad. When you are deep in your prayers, you don't forget your responsibility to others. That's why, as I said yesterday, that we pray Salatul Jama'ah, so that to increase that affection and love for each other, for us as human beings. This Imam Ali is an incredible Imam for us, an incredible role model. He says in the Nahj al-Balagha that if I was given whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth and whatever is in between the heavens and the earth, if you give me all of that to take away a grain of barley from an ant, grain of barley, something very small. If you ask me to do that, give me all of it just to take the grain away from an ant, I would not do it. Because even the grain of barley is risk for the big lands. It's risk for the big land. This is how careful Imam was. That we should be careful not only of the rights of fellow human beings, but even the rights of animals, even the rights of plants. We will talk about that also, inshallah, about the environment too. Wilayat then is not only to follow, but to cultivate that personality within us. In other words, the Imam is not only the books of history, he lives in our hearts. He talks to us. When you have somebody who's talking to you in your conscience, you try and model yourself on that person. When we go for ziyarat, inshallah, we go to ziyarat in Medina. When we said this particular ziyarat to Hazrat Fatima alayhi salam, and as I said, as we know, we are not even sure where she's buried. She was buried in secrecy. That, by the way, in itself is telling us something. Because normally when people are buried or somebody is buried, especially with the Lord of the Prophet, it's a mass funeral. She wasn't an ordinary person, but she wanted to be buried in secrecy. She's talking to us in her death. Why is she buried in secrecy? Why don't we know where she's buried? And in this ziyarah we say, لِنُبَشِّرُ أَنفُسَنَا قَدْ طَهُرْنَا بِوِلَايَتِهِ. Oh Fatima, we give glad tidings to ourselves that we have become pure because of you. We have become pure because we follow you. Assalamu alaikum ya hawratul insiyya. Peace be upon you, O one who is an angel on earth. She's like an angel on earth. When we recite these things, these are not empty words, my friend. These are things that tell us of the status of Hazrat Fatima. Indeed, according to Hadith Qudsi, that when Hazrat Fatima alayhi salam used to pray, her body would shiver, it would tremble, because she knew exactly who she was praying to. And therefore Allah says that when Fatima prays, the light illuminates the heaven just as it illuminates the stars. When she prays, Allah says to the angels, look at how Fatima, her limbs shake because of her prayers towards me. That is why she's called Hawratul Insiyya. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These awliya then, they become role models for us in their lives. And they set us examples of what we should be like. It's an interesting comparison. In Christianity, in Catholicism, normally you become a saint after you die. The Pope, what is called the process of beatification. Beatification means he observes. If you have performed a miracle while you are alive, after you die, you become a saint. The latest saint was Mother Teresa, if you recall. In Islam, We do not need a pope to make you a saint. Allah makes you a saint. And Allah makes you a saint while you are alive, not after you die. In other words, holiness or sanctity, sacredness is recognized while you are alive. As I've mentioned, that this Imam lives not only in the past, he lives in our heart. When we go for ziyarat, one of the first things that we do is recite the Dukhul. Do you remember that? Is the Dukhul is recommended to recite permission to enter the haram. What do we say when we enter the haram? We say, Ashhadu annaka tasma'u kalami wa taruddu salami. I bear witness, O my Imam, that you can hear my speech. You can hear my greetings to you, and you are responding to me too. Can you see the conversation that's going on? And if you think that they will let you not speak or converse with each other, then you're wrong. It's in the Quran, my friends. It's reported in the Quran that when somebody passes away, they meet with the Malaika, and the Malaika are talking to them. People who were doing wrong on this earth. Fima kuntum, the Quran said, Malaika will ask them, what were you doing? Where were you? And we will say, Kunna mus'afafina fil ard. We were oppressed on earth. See the conversation going on after death, not before death, not in this life, after death. Fima kuntum kunna mus'afafina fil ard. The Malaika will ask us, Alam takun ardullahi wa'asiyah fatuhajiru fiha? Wasn't the earth of Allah so fast that you could do hijrah in it? Why did you accept to be oppressed? So even with the Imams, we are continuously talking to them. Then, oh my Imam, I know that you can hear me and you are responding to my salam, but because of my sins, I cannot hear you. Sallallahu alaihi
Allah.
These role models for us, the awliya, the saints, they have something special. I do not know if you have met people. I have. People who are so holy, so saintly. We take from the Imam, the ordinary people, that when you look at them, you know that this person is very special. There is light in his eyes, or her eyes. That person is somehow Allah is speaking through them. Allah speaks to us and through us too. And that person is also barakah. This is what the meaning of barakah is, that blessing that Allah gives to the saints, to those whom He loves. We believe that the Imams have got the barakah not only in their life, but also after their death. And that's why when we go to the Dharir, what do? We press ourselves against the Dharir also. Why do we do that? So that we can attain the barakah of the Imam to us, not only in their lives, but even in their deaths. One of the books that I had the honor of translating, it's called Masail al-Fiqhiyah. It's in English now. It's called Questions of Jurisprudence. It was written by a scholar, Lebanese scholar, Abdul Sharif al-Musawi, you know his name. And he is actually buried very close to the shrine of Imam Ali al-Najm. But he died in 1957. In Urdu, कहते हैं वो हाजिर जवाब बोल. You know हाजिर जवाब? Very witty. He could answer just like that. Our scholars, but they were trained how to respond and to give a response whereby nobody else would retort them. So Abu Sharif al-Musawi, he went for Hajj one year, it is reported, and the king invited scholars of Saudi Arabia, invited scholars just to greet him. So one of the scholars invited was Abu Sharif al-Musawi. Abu Sharif went to meet the king. He took a copy of the Quran with him as a gift to the king. The king took the Quran and kissed it. Abu Sharif says, Astaghfirullah, read that Quran. Please read that Quran. So you kiss leather, because the cover of the Quran is made out of leather, right? That leather, you can make shoes with it, you can make a bed with it, you can make a Quran with it. How dare you kiss leather? And the king said, I didn't kiss the leather, I kissed what was inside it. What I kissed was inside it. This was just a total symbol of it. Abu Sharif says, this is exactly the lesson we should learn. When we go to Najaf, when we go for Ziyarah, we're not kissing the chains and iron that is outside. It is what is inside it that we are kissing, my friends. What is inside it is what we are expressing our love to. So don't say this is bid'ah. Don't say this is actually a sunnah that you yourself are practicing. There is something else that wilayah is teaching us. Wilayah makes us rich. You know, when we talk here, the word rich, the only thing that comes in our minds is dollars. And even if it's American, not Canadian dollars or Australian dollars. But richness, we measure richness by how much we have. The Ahlul Bayt measure richness by how little you need. The less you need, the more rich you are. Somebody said it very correctly, that Allah provides for your need, but He does not provide for your greed. He provides for your need, He doesn't provide for your greed. Maybe it be a good opportunity for us to reflect on this, to tell a story, if I may, of this whole idea of richness, of how we are continuously after dollars. The story is told of Zanzibar. I think you've heard of Zanzibar by now. I come from there. Zanzibar is an island, and most of the people are fishermen. They just go and fish and sit back and do nothing. And the story goes that a rich American goes there, capitalist, entrepreneur, industrialist, and he sees a fisherman sitting under a tree. And the American says, "What are you doing?" The fisherman says, "I've done my fishing for today. I'm sitting back doing nothing." The American says, "Are you crazy? Why don't you go and catch some more fish?" The Zanzibar says, "Why should I catch more fish?" So after you catch more fish, you make more money. You can build a bigger boat and get people to work for you. The Zanzibar said, "Gee, you Americans are brilliant. I never thought of this. What happens after that?" He says, "After that, you can build a fishing industry in Zanzibar and make even more money." And the Zanzibar says, "After that," the American says, "After that, you can build a multinational fishing industry throughout the world and make plenty of money." The Zanzibar says, "After that," says, "After that, you can sit back and do nothing." So what do you think I'm doing right now? What do you think I'm doing right now? Why should I go through all that to do exactly what I'm doing right now? In other words, in order to be rich and satisfied, go to Zanzibar. No, seriously. We measure richness by how much we have. The Ahlul Bayt measured richness by how little they needed. And therefore, Abu Dhar was a person who could not be corrupted. He was very poor, he was not rich. Somebody came up to him and says, "Ya Abu Dhar, can I offer you something?" Abu Dhar says, "I'm very rich. I've got everything I need." "But you don't have anything," he said. Abu Dhar says, "I have the wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That wilayah is enough for me." This is the Abu Dhar who would go to Damascus and look at the palaces of Muawiyah and point to them and recite verses from the Quran. الَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ, those who hold gold and silver. وَلَا يَنْفِقُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and they do not give the gold and silver to the poor. فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ, inform them of the azab that they are going to experience. In other words, Abu Dhar himself was reached by the wilayah. He accepted the wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib and not the khilafah of Muawiyah. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The wilayah then is something that empowers us, enriches us. You know, as I said, we should not look at the Imams as historical figures. Look upon them as historical and our own models in our own time. We use that history and bring it to our own time to how we can live according to their ideals. One of the things that the Imam always used to learn is the Quran itself. You cannot separate the two, as we know, Hadith al-Haqalayn, that the two go hand in hand, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. Many a time I think that we use the Quran more for just reverence. We revere the Quran when they will refer to the Quran. Somebody said this correctly, there is more of the Quran on our walls in our houses than in our hearts. I do not know if this happens in your community, but it happens for me. The Khoja community are very fond of doing this. At the time of the marriage, when the woman walks out of the house for the final time of the bride, on the wedding night, we take the Quran and put it on the head. Do you guys do that? Put it on the head. I always say the Quran was not brought to be put on the head. It was brought to be put in the head, my friends. Use the Quran, read it, recite it, and tell them young lady with her privileges, her rights, and her responsibilities, rather than paying token respect to the Quran itself. There was something about Imam Ali at the time which we need to understand. As far as the Quran was concerned, there is what is called the Tanzil of the Quran, and there is the Ta'wil of the Quran. Tanzil is the revelation of the Quran to the Prophet himself. Ta'wil is the interpretation of the Quran by the Waliullah, by the Wali of the time. And therefore, as the Prophet stands for the Tanzil of the Quran, Ali ibn Abi Talib stands for the Ta'wil of the Quran. The Imam Ali himself said that as soon as a verse was revealed to the Prophet, he would tell me where this verse was revealed, under what circumstances, what are the conditions, what are the circumstances for the revelation of this verse, what does it mean, the outer meaning, the inner meaning. And therefore, Imam Ali used to say that if you want to know what a particular verse means, come to me, I will tell you, because the Prophet himself taught me about it.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
That is why the Prophet says, Ali ka nafsi. He never said that about any other companion. Ali ka nafsi, Ali is like me. Why? Because he has the Quran in his heart. He has interiorized, he has spiritualized the Quran itself. And therefore, he said, as I said, that he had assimilated himself with the Quran. It's very amazing of what Imam Ali taught us as a role model. He moved from knowledge to vision. Knowledge is something, as I said, you put in your mind. Vision is something that you put in your heart so you become an enlightened human being. He went from the outer to the inner. Knowledge was not only in the mind, it was in his heart too. And therefore, when he was giving a khutbah once, somebody stood up. In the middle of the khutbah, somebody asked him, Ya Ali, ara'ayta rabbak? Have you seen your Lord? You tell us about your Lord. Have you seen him? And what was the response he gives? Ma kuntu a'budu rabban lam ara. I would never worship a Lord whom I have not seen. I would not worship a Lord whom I have not seen, but I have not seen him with my eyes. I see him with my heart. And therefore, in another hadith, it says, لو كشف الغطاء لما أزداد يقينا. If even the parda, the ghita was removed, the veil was removed, meaning my Lord, my yaqeen would not change one iota. Because he had so much vision and so much yaqeen in his Lord that his understanding, his closeness to Allah would not change at all. Sallu ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
It's a role model then. The Imams, the Wilayah teaches us not only to believe in God, to worship Him, but at the same time to be deeply connected with Him, to be, if you like, bonded with Him. And I recited this verse earlier, so we're not going to the details again. This was the verse on the night of Hijrah, when Imam Ali actually slept on the bed of the Prophet. And the verse that comes with وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَسْرِ نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ. Amongst the people are those who sell their own souls for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He did not just worship Allah, he sold his soul for Him. Why? Because that is what he was all about. That's how he gave and how much he loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave his soul for Him. My sisters and brothers, my time is almost up. Just one or two things that I want to talk about, Wilayah, and then we go to the Messiah. I do not know how many of you have been to Cairo. I have been there. One of the figures who's buried in Cairo is Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i, one of the Ahlul Sunnah's 4 Imams, is Shafi'i. Shafi'i mother is quite close to our mother in many, many respects. They will recite the Bismillah loudly, for example, when they read in the Salah. Whenever our scholars, most of them, they do taqiyya, many times they live under conditions where they could not openly express their beliefs because of the harsh conditions. They pretended to be Shafi'is because that was the way that he was very close to us. And Shafi himself used to love Imam Ali. I've been to his shrine in Cairo What I was amazed when I went there, there were all the couplets and poems of written by Shafi in regards to Ahlul Bayt. Because he used to work with Ahlul Bayt. And he used to say, in the olden days, they used to call us Rafidis. They still do that. Rafidi are those who reject us because we rejected the first three caliphs. And Shafi says that if to love Ali ibn Abi Talib means to be a Rafidi, then I'm the first Rafidi. Because I love Ali ibn Abi Talib. And he says regarding Ali ibn Abi Talib, what should I say about this man? Whose friends, his own friends, hid his own fadail, his excellencies, because they were scared. If they were to recite it, they'd be killed. His enemies would also hid his excellencies because they were his enemies. Despite all of that, there are more fadail and excellencies of Ali ibn Abi Talib than any of the other companions. There are more fadail and more excellencies hadith in favor of Ali ibn Abi Talib than any of the other companions of the Prophet. When we go to Najaf, it used to be called Gharib before. It's something remarkable. There is a house there. Have you ever wondered why the house is there in Najaf? Who started it? I encourage you, by the way, whenever you go for ziyarah or you go for Hajj, ask questions. Don't just say, Fulan is buried here, this person is buried here. Why is he buried here? Who killed him? What happened to him? In other words, always be inquisitive. So you see a house in Najaf, ask yourself, where did this house come from? Who started it? You know who started it? It's very interesting. Sheikh Tusi. Sheikh Tusi died in the year 1067. You can imagine. We're talking of something that 1100 years ago. 1067, that's when he died. Sheikh Tusi was based in Baghdad. He was a student, if you heard the name of Sheikh Mufid, Sharif al-Murtada. They were all together. And Sheikh Mufid was his teacher. Sheikh Tusi was a student. After Sheikh Mufid passed away, Sharif al-Murtada became the leader of the Shia community. And after he passed away in 1044, it was Sheikh Tusi. Sheikh Tusi's prominence was so great. In my view, he was the greatest scholar that we've ever produced. In every field that you can think of, he's written something. But because of his prominence as a Shia scholar, he was awarded a chair of this particular position in Baghdad, in the area called Kara. When there were riots against the Shias, you know what Sheikh Tusi did? He had to leave Baghdad. His whole library was burned. When we say that our books are no longer there, it is because of such instances. Where does he go? A great scholar, imagine someone like Ayatollah Sistani or any of our Marajim, if they are removed from where they are, where does he go? He goes to a place called Hari. Hari is what we call Najaf today. He goes to the qabr of Imam Ali, and he says, the Prophet says, Ana Madinatu ilm, wa Aliyyun babuha. I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is the gate. We shall go to the gate of knowledge to seek knowledge. And he established with a small group of students who came with him, he established the origins of what we call today the Hausa itself. So, and of course it flourishes. Today, if you go to Najaf, by the way, there are three main gates to the Haram. There is the Bab al-Qibla, there is the Bab of Muslim Yaqeen, and the Bab of Tus. Sheikh Tusi is buried there. If you go from the Haram to Wadi Salam, if you're just on your left, is the mosque of Tusi itself. Go there and get a chance. At least beside Fatiha, with very short. Sallallahu It's the fourth night of Muharram. The heart cries out to recite the Messiah of Sayyid Shuhada. Imam Hussein, even after arrival in Karbala, he didn't want war. Even though he was asked many a time by his companions, let's kill them, let's kill all this army. Because they are weak now, they are few in number. Imam Hussein says, I will never stop the fighting. And he would actually sit with Umar ibn Sa'd late at night to see there was a way of avoiding any conflict. Umar ibn Sa'd said, why did you come here? He said, because I was invited to. If you people don't want me, I'll go back. Not only to Medina, I'll even go to India. I'll go far away. I'll be out of your way. but do not commit the sin of killing the grandson of the Prophet. Umar ibn Sa'd told him, maybe we can work out a compromise. And he wrote to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad that I think that we can avoid conflict here. And Shim read this letter, says Hussein wants to get away. Don't let him go. Because if you don't take the bay'ah now, you never get the bay'ah. This was the condition that Imam Hussein was living under. On the day of Ashura, and even on the eve of Ashura, Imam Hussein was sitting outside his tent. Sheikh Mufid is telling us that he's sitting outside his tent and suddenly he dozes off. His sister Zainab comes up to him and says, "Oh, my brother, wake up. Can't you see the enemy is coming? This is the night of Muharram. Imam Hussein wakes up and says, "Oh, Zainab, I have just seen our grandfather in my vision." And he said, "Ya Hussein, Anta taruh ilayna." Oh, Hussein, you are coming towards us. Many people gave their lives for Hussein. One of the person was actually a slave for John. John was not even a Muslim. He had served Abu Dhar. But now he was in Karbala. He comes up to Imam Hussein and says, "Ya Rasulullah, it's my turn now." Imam Hussein says, "Oh, John, you have been with us all this time. Jihad is no longer waiting for you. They don't want you. Why do you want to die?" John says, "How can I leave you this time, oh my father? I've been with you all my life. How can I leave you? Today, these people will know how a blind man can fight." John was blind. Imam Hussein allows John to go. He recites the rights, the poetry. How you people are sinful that you want to kill the grandson of the Prophet. As John fights a noble battle, he falls down on the ground. Hussein was running to him. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه. Amongst the believers are those who have fulfilled what they have promised Allah to do. Oh, John, Hussein puts his cheek on the cheek of John. I can smell the sweet smell, fragrance of Jannah through you. Hussein, tonight for me is a very, very special night. Because the bayan that I recite on this night is an incredible bayan. It's about Hur. Hur is the person who shows the difference between truth and falsehood. Because Hur shows us what it means to have a conscience which is alive. He was the one who stopped Imam Hussein in the desert. When the event Karbala proceeded, Hur was observing everything. He went to Umar ibn Sa'd on the day of Ashura. He says, "Umar, is there going to be a conflict today?" Umar said, "Yes, definitely. There is no way out now." Hur himself went to one side. Somebody came up to him, Muhajir bin Aus came up and said, "What is happening to you?" If somebody asked me who is the most brave person in this army, it was you. I see that you are perplexed, you are worried. Hur takes Muhajir near the tent of Imam Hussein. Says, "Can you hear the sound of those children? Al-Atash, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. These are the grandchildren of the Prophet. You can drink water. Anyone drink water, but you deprive water to the grandchildren of the Prophet." Hur himself says to Muhammad, "Inni ukhayyiru nafsi bayna al-jannah wal-nar." I'm choosing within myself between heaven and hell. I can no longer stand this. Hur's conscience was biting him. He goes to his brothers, his sons, and his slaves. One of those two can come with me. In the Arab culture, when you come with your shield turned upside down, it means you come for peace, not for war. Hur comes to Hussein with his shield turned upside down. Hussein says, "Hur coming." He says to Abbas, "Abbas, go and receive my guest. My guest is coming to me." Hur comes to Hussein and he says, "Mawla, come to Kataiba min makana minni. I have come repentant to you. I'm the one who's responsible. Is there a way that you can forgive me?" Look at Hussein. If I was you, or if I was there, how can I forgive you after what you've done to me? But on the contrary, Hussein shows us how to forgive people. He lifts Hur up and he says, "Hur, you are as noble and as free as your mother has named you. Your mother named you well. When you go for ziyarat in Hur, you will know that Hur is not covered in Karbala, is outside in Karbala. When you recite his ziyarat, the word of Imam Hussein you will recite, oh Hur, your mother named you very well. Hur comes in front of the army. The army is perplexed. Oh Hur, you are with us. Why are you fighting for Hussein? Said, oh people, I did not invite Hussein. You are killing Hussein while the children are dying of thirst. How can you do this? Where are your consciences? Hur fights a noble battle. He fights a battle when he falls from the ground. Hussein goes running to him. Riwayat says that Hussein opens the eyes of Hur. Hur says, oh my Allah, have I fulfilled my mission? Have you forgiven me? There was blood coming out from the forehead of Hur. Hussein puts that handkerchief of Fatima Zahra on the forehead of Hur. Madam Hussein.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein,
Rahim. Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. یا حسینم که دل از غیر تو ببرید منم هم که لاجرمه مهر تو نوچید منم یا حسین یا حسین
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
نشین کعبه تو گویم زینب غم دل با تو بگویم زینب بنشین کعبه تو گویم زینب غم دل با تو بگویم زینب بعد من قافله سالار تویی خواهر من دختر حیدر کار تویی خواهر من جمله یاران حسین در سفر کرب و بلا سر بکر جان برای دین خدا خواهم شد خواهر من خواهرم اکبر و خاص و علی اصغر من خواهرم اکبر و خاص و علی اصغر من هدف نیزه و پیکان جفا خواهم شد خواهر من جمله یاران حسین در سفر کرب و بلا جمله یاران حسین در سفر کرب و بلا سر بکف جان برای دین خدا خواهم شد خواهر من خون ما جمله در این دشت و خون ما جمله در این دشت و رمان خواهم شد پولی و کمرو به ما دشمن جان خواهم شد خواهر من خواهرم خون شهید جان به بیابان بلا خواهر